Hello, everyone. It's Tyler Joseph, and this is Dark to Light, episode number 2. Today, we're going to focus on several things: protecting yourself from the constant barrage of hypnoprogramming, how to shield yourself when researching this material, because make no mistake, the negative energy is transferable, and so you have to shield yourself completely in order to be unaffected in your quest for knowledge. And we'll explain how to do that a little bit. And I also wanted to get into another question that somebody sent to me through Twitter, which is how to identify whether a loved one or just anyone in general is fallen victim to these occult attacks. And we're going to get into all that here today. Before we do, I just want to say thank you for the overwhelmingly positive response and feedback that I've been getting from the community on Twitter and from on YouTube. Already doing better than I expected, and I'll have multiple platforms. Spotify's already up, and I'll be linking people to that version as well if that's your preferred means of listening. Google and Apple have a slightly longer verification process that I wasn't aware of, and so those links and platforms should be within the next 48 to 72 hours. I should have my RSS feed verified, and it should be up through there. So without further ado, let's get into some things here, okay? I know that in order to proceed, no matter if you're looking at this information or just in your day-to-day life, learning how to protect your mind from the constant assault is crucial, because this is how they get people, right? You look out at the world today, you look out at the riots and Antifa, who I just, right before I started this, someone just linked me to this horrible image of them with a severed pig's head, setting it on fire. 100% meant as occult imagery. Obviously, the pig head is meant to symbolize the police, but it's deeper than that. And I'm not sitting here saying that these people are intentionally, by and large, satanic out there, but they are 100% satanically controlled. Empty vessels being directed at the will of the deep state cabal, and it's pretty clear. And so, before we get into, maybe you have loved ones out there who might be participating in the riots or sympathizing with what people are doing, they're on the precipice of being taken over, right? And being taken over is the first step to actively, willingly participating in evil and occult practices. It's a slippery slope. But let's start with how to protect yourself. And it's the simplest and easiest thing, but it's also takes discipline and focus. And the power of meditation and prayer is our best weapon, right? And I would define meditation as the skill of focusing 100% of your energy and attention in one specific area in the present moment. The consistent practice of meditation comes with a myriad of health benefits. They include increased concentration, decreased anxiety, a general feeling of well-being and connection. Meditation helps to clear the negative ego and the pain body, which develops its own consciousness. Believe it or not, this pain body that they manufacture, that they can siphon and vampire, what they call loosh, right? Which is a combination of terror, anxiety, fear, anger, all the negative emotions that human beings can express and are being forced into these scenarios. That's their fuel, right? And so protecting yourself from exhibiting and projecting those negative emotions and traits is crucial to destroying their ability to continue to operate. And by them, I mean the demonic energies. We could say that it's negative aliens being influenced by demonic energies, but just for the sake of simplicity so far, we're going to just call them demons. Okay? How you limit them is by cutting off their fuel supply. And people have learned how to do it, which is why they had to ramp up the human trafficking and adrenochrome harvesting so that they could have enough fuel to continue to operate and dominate the way that they have been. But they're losing their grip. Let's continue. Although a great number of people try meditation at some point in their lives, only a small percentage actually are consistent with their dedication for the long term. This is true. The most difficult period of reprogramming personal habits or unconscious behaviors is the first 21 days, in my experience. If commitment and dedication are disciplined with the persistence of practice, the benefits and rewards of meditation lifestyle become increasingly obvious. And the state of inner peace and balance are much more easy to achieve in all life situations. And this includes researching, this includes having the ability, if you can stomach it, to watch a movie that doesn't have hypno-programming in it, right? Very difficult to find, but you can venture into it if you're properly shielded, right? Quieting the mind becomes a skill that you acquire. Becoming present to the moment here and now are the cornerstones of being a balanced human being, in my experience and research. Prayer and meditation are crucial. They connect us to our higher intelligence and have positive impacts on calming your mind. Prayer focuses on positive emotions like love and gratitude and compassion, which allow goodness in our lives and the lives of those that we pray for. And meditation is crucial because it reduces your anxiety and your stress, depression, many other negative emotions that I just described that they feed off of, which helps us find and connect to peaceful states with our higher self. Being mindful improves mental flexibility, brain elasticity, and keeps neurons active. Spiritually centering yourself on peace, prayer, contemplation of God and the universe helps maintain trust in life, faith, and relaxes every part of our body. And I say all that because that is the shield. That is how you continue to operate without them infiltrating your mind and your spirit, which, make no mistake, they are attempting and succeeding in many cases at doing this from the very first moment you take a breath. They try to get the kids more than anybody else because they're the most impressionable with their growing minds. They can plant the seeds that later grow into a full-fledged acolytes and possibly even willing participants. But you see it right now. It's very sad to see. Many young people are lost in this satanic abyss right now, and they don't even realize it. And maybe the people who love them know that something is seriously wrong, but even they don't fully realize what's happening. They think maybe it's, political, which it is a little bit, right? There is an element of liberal politics that has influenced many people, but then you have to understand the liberal politics, the democratic politics, the left have been taken over completely. And it's interesting to point out before I continue about the left and right hand paths, right? The right hand path is to God and to light and to service to others, and gratitude. And the left hand path is notoriously the phrase and label put on the satanic path. So it's not a coincidence, because there are no coincidences, that it's the left and the right. And I'm not saying everyone who's a Democrat is a satanic devil worshiper, but they're being influenced by those energies, those philosophies. The undercurrent is prevalent and undeniable as far as I'm concerned. Let's get back to what we were talking about here with prayer and meditation. Consistent meditation practice is helpful in training an undisciplined and cluttered mind. Meditation can be applied in many different techniques and is helpful for facilitating forgiveness and letting go of negativity in many forms. In its early stages of developing the meditation skill, sit and relax. Try to observe thoughts as they pass through your mind, having no attachment to them. Once you notice the thought pattern, let it go and bring your focus back to the here and now. And this gets easier to do the more that you do it, right? It's like any other skill. You don't learn how to do anything or master anything without consistent practice. It's very, very crucial, right? And so if you have tried meditation and you get frustrated or distracted, that's not uncommon. So don't feel discouraged, because the idea here is to unlock these latent faculties in our mind that, through a variety of things, through the calcification of your pineal gland, through hypnoprogramming, through all sorts of things that you know about, they try to suppress what is already innate within us, right? We have the ability to connect directly to our higher selves, which is directly connected to our light bodies, to our soul, and to God. And so it's crucial for the enemy to try to suppress this as much as possible, to try to discredit it, to try to distract. And so you will find in the early stages of learning how to meditate that it feels impossible almost to clear your mind, right? The breathing is important. The here and now is important. Everything else, you just try to quiet it to one singular point. And then you'll find the more you do this, the easier it becomes. But let's continue here. What is most important now is to relax the body and mind through meditation, and to clear the negative ego and emotional pain and stay calm and neutral. Pure alchemy exists within the energetic balance of the core spiritual essence within the natural law of the divine being. Okay, you understand that? To connect to the inner spiritual alchemy, one must extract the artificial machinery influences and intentionality to remove the houses of ego, right? These false personalities that we identify with that have been created. They call them alters, and it happens through trauma-based mind control. Okay, and it's again a spectrum of influence that this has, right? If you've been, I hope no one out here listening has been a victim of ritual sex abuse. That would be at the higher end of the spectrum. But even from birth, when your children or you as a child watch, these movies intended for children where almost universally some tragedy happens right away, right? That's the seed of trauma-based mind control, right? So they see in the Lion King, the parent lion dies or whatever. There's a million examples. You guys know what I'm talking about. And so that I bring that up because those create alters to deal with those personalities, to deal with that trauma. They create alternate personalities to deal with those trauma. Very important to learn how to clear that, right? As we are opening into states of consciousness in the trans-time continuum, consider to conceive of unity consciousness through meditation by the expanse of space within the infinity of time. Okay? These are things to focus on, right? Once you're in that space, how to get to that space. That we're all one consciousness you're trying to connect to. Having a subjective experience here on this earth, right? So that the Creator could better understand itself, himself, however you want to refer to it. Meditation focuses upon perpetual presence in all time and space. Perpetual presence in dreaming and waking states, combining into oneness, right? That it's all one consciousness, whether you are aware of it or not. This is crucial to understand this part of it, because really what they're doing is programming your subconscious mind. In accessing memory of perpetual presence of all dread vanishes. It's one of the main benefits. Attempting to reach neutrality in mind towards all existing things. Neutrality is neither love, nor hate, nor indifference. Neutral, right? You realize what it is. Because this is something that is very hard to do. when you see and hear of stories about what they're doing to children, when you're watching these morons, for lack of a better word, burn down cities, anger, even if it's righteous anger, is fuel for these satanic entities and energies to siphon off of. It's very difficult to do. But if you're centered, right, you don't want the misplaced anger, right, or anger without action. If you allow yourself to feel these things, you must take a positive action to counterbalance it. Otherwise, your anger and rage, even if it's righteous anger and rage, will take control of you. Holding mentally the capacity of sameness, equilibrium, and constant calm is crucial. This discipline attracts and increases the virtues of the Spirit of Christ. This acquires virtue, benevolence towards all things, even your enemies, folks. Okay? I'm just as guilty of this as anybody. I see this stuff and I'll give you the example, right? Every single time that I see a known pedophile like Ellen or Tom Hanks or John Podesta or Joe Biden, any of these people that we in the Q community know, I have a tendency to lose my composure online. And in the digital war, I attack them constantly. I get suspended from Twitter or limited multiple times a week. Every time these people get up there and want to spit a bunch of nonsense, I lose my mind. And so I don't sit here on a high horse saying, hey, do as I say, not as I do. It's nothing like that. I'm pointing it out because it is a struggle. It is difficult to remain calm and in a state of equilibrium because it's infuriating to watch what's happening in this world. Infuriating to know how much evil has been done while we had our heads in the sand, right? How much our complacence turned into compliance and allowed them to get away with this. But that's the things that we have to clear out in order to proceed correctly. One of the most challenging things in my experience is to do just that. This discipline attracts and increases one's ability to connect to humanity as a whole and spiritual expression without praise or blame or victimizer archetypes, which is what they want. Cycles of abuse. We're being abused by them, so we have this impulse to abuse them back. Even if it's just in the form of punishment or vengeance, even righteous vengeance. Still something, it's a slippery slope. They will feed off that energy. It's a spiritual war. And if you're asking where you can start, there's so much variety in the individual stages of where you're at in this ascension process, as I call it. Take a 30-day challenge of meditation is what I recommend, right? Clear negative ego fear programs. Focus on that. Mental discipline through devoted focus and meditation to expand your own consciousness. And resolve emotional conflicts within the artificial pain bodies that have been created. Okay? It's important to try to visualize this as a separate, all this pain is an illusion, right? But you have to realize that it's been manufactured as a separate entity right next door to us, right? Another body that is absorbing all this pain. That's what they're trying to do, right? Our true self doesn't experience these things. Our true self is in a calm state of equilibrium. Because we know our true selves, that we are an expression directly of the Creator. And if you remember that you're God, in a sense, that you directly are in the image of God, as it says in many spiritual practices, the Bible included, then how can you feel fear and pain and anxiety when you know you are in part the Creator? It's getting yourself back to that's super crucial. And so I hope that answers the question. I gave it quite a bit of thought that I was asked about how to engage this information, and by this information I mean the deep state cabal, the satanic pedophilia, the destruction of our country and world, all the horrible things that are happening right now. How do you research it without being influenced by it was the question that I was attempting to answer there. And also just in general, how to calm your anxiety, right? I also, and this is the slippery slope here, right? I'm going to give, we all know things like turmeric and a bunch of different ways to and removal of fluoride in your water and toothpaste to decalcify your pineal gland. Some people find cannabis beneficial. Some people find psychedelics beneficial. I say if you do need some sort of big push like that to reconnect to the spiritual, proceed with caution. Do your research. Talk to people in a way that's not mindless. You have to be mindful of what you're doing. You are lifting the veil, in a sense. And if you lift the veil before you've properly meditated and properly centered yourself, you risk being latched onto, right? It could be actually the most counterproductive thing you can do if done incorrectly. So I don't take changing your consciousness artificially lightly, even though it's something I've done. If you follow me on Twitter, you know this. I've probably done psychedelic rituals, DMT alone, over 100 times. If you add in psilocybin mushrooms and LSD, I would be unable to calculate how many times I have ventured into this realm. And even when I did it for the negative, I was still mindful of the negative, but it's very important set and setting, and that is not just your physical set and setting, but your mental set and setting is very crucial to being able to proceed properly. All right, now the other question that I wanted to get into today was how to identify when someone, there's two parts to this question, and they are how to identify if a loved one is slipping into the grips of the deep state cult. And that one's easy. Just ask them what political party they identify with. It's a joke. But it's not a joke. It is and it isn't. I'm not saying all Democrats are satanic. Again, I made this point earlier, but it is kind of their platform right now. And so they are definitely going to comply with the agenda of the deep state satanic cabal. 100% on that. And if you comply and you sympathize, then you are on your way to being full-fledged, taken over. And then when you're taken over, you may identify with it and participate consciously. I want to explain something. And then the other part of the question, before I get into that, the other part of the question is how to identify an infiltrator, right? Maybe your church or in your circle of friends or in your workplace, any number of instances that you could possibly be dealing with a satanic infiltrator. And I'm gonna go into something that is going to be a little bit concerning to people. When I was running the cult of the Black Spiral, an offshoot of a sinister tribe of the Order of Nine Angles is how I referred to it and how they referred to it. One of my primary focuses was teaching people how to do just that, how to infiltrate, how to chameleon, think mirror, right? How to figure out the best way to engage someone so that they trust you immediately, right? Doing it in real time in a non-suspicious way. I give them many tactics of how to do that. Some people are innately better at becoming a chameleon and deceiving people, right? I feel like I had mastered this, unfortunately. And so I trained people how to do it. And the scary thing is when you're the victim of this infiltration and deception, before you know that someone is a liar and a deceiver, it can be very difficult. Very difficult. I myself, at the height of my deception tactics, was probably perceived by strangers as charming or charismatic or friendly, right? I oftentimes, I'll give you an example. Many times, one of my best strategies would be to befriend somebody, right? Have a story that caused them to sympathize with me in order for them to just let the devil into their house, so to speak, right? And then I would blindside them after they'd given me their trust and rob them and defraud them and get their information and identity theft, all sorts of things that I managed to do through this tactic. And so this ties into what we were just talking about before. Once you are connected to your higher self and to the Creator, right, then your intuition is going to come back. This latent faculty that people have almost diminished into some sort of psychic BS, right? But really it's latent in all of us. This sixth sense, this ability to feel and sense when evil or good is near you. But in this instance, we're going to talk about evil, right? And again, not only in that sense, but I targeted, and they will and do target places of worship of all faiths. Anything that connects you to a higher power is their enemy. They want lower vibrational connections, not higher. The more that you realize this, the more you'll be able to spot and see who the infiltrators are, right? Because if we're talking about how they do this in churches, they're not going to be just a passive member of the audience, okay? They have an agenda, right? And if they're clever, like I trained people to be, then they won't push in a way that is suspicious, but they will push, right? So beware of someone who is new, who rises the ranks within your church or spiritual community in a way that seems artificial. If it seems artificial, it probably is. If you catch them in one lie, that's your foothold, right? Because then the inversion of reality begins. One lie builds on another lie, builds on another lie, builds a web of lies, which is the goal. And they're also, my tactic was always to have a mirror. Think how the media right now blames everything on Trump when it's really them, right? The complete inversion, the complete opposite, the complete projection of what they're doing onto somebody else. This is classic occult tactics, right? They have to have a scapegoat. I even think, and I don't know this for sure, but I've seen evidence that even a person like Michael Jackson, right, who most people believe was probably a pedophile, and maybe he was, I don't know for sure, and so if he was, I don't want to give him a pass. But that situation seems like a classic tactic of a patsy, right, of someone to take the fall, of someone to say, hey, there's your bad guy, it's not us. There's your child molester, it's not me. That tactic is essential to understanding sinister thinking, right? These people are hunters, or they were. They're soon to become the hunted, but generally speaking, they're predatory in all ways, not just sexually predatory, but predatory towards their own selfish gains. And it's disgusting. It really is. But it happens. And it happens on the big scale that you see, and it happens on the small scale, Very crucial to understand that. I want to kind of segue here into some things I wrote about the Luciferian abyss, right? Which is how if you understand this concept, you can understand where someone might be at in your own life that you care about if you see them slipping, or just as a way to have a more full understanding of consciousness. It's important to understand this concept of the Luciferian abyss, the Satanic abyss. At the stage of achieving embodiment of the observer point, one will progress in consciousness and become a vessel for which expressions of the law of compassion or the law of destruction will remain stunted or progressed, depending on which side of the observer point consciousness. This level of observer point is when the higher mind remains static as a result of not synthesizing with the higher heart opening. This is what's defined in my mind as the Luciferian abyss, right? When your heart is not synthesizing from the single point observer level. This is the aspect of the higher mind which holds access to a threshold of observer consciousness that is devoid of the deep heart-based compassion and true empathy, which is innate to human beings. Compassion and empathy is what makes us who we are. It's what makes us an expression of the Creator. It hangs on the edge of the consciousness abyss in the higher mental body until it can be fully let go and surrender, dissolving into the vast oceanic field of love and compassion. Jumping over the Luciferian abyss is the final point of surrender. We may feel fear. We may be swallowed into the black hole of nothingness. It's very difficult, right? As you continue to, and this ties into it again, and this is why I brought this up. This ties in to shielding yourself properly, right? As you are going through the dark night of the soul, many of you out there, in discovering this information, and I keep saying this information, when I say that, I'm referring to all the QAnon stuff, right? All the deep state stuff, all the satanic pedophilia. Once your eyes are open to this, it's crucial that you understand it's dangerous in a sense, that you could be lost in it, that it could crush you. It's so devastating, right? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it and proceed, because you have to understand. Us not understanding the nature of this situation is what's caused it to go on for so long. Just wanted to clarify that. At this point, we stand at the edge of the abyss, peering over the massive void. We must surrender to God fully in order to make the leap of faith to jump over to the other side into the loving arms of the Creator. This is why after achieving the observer point and emotions go extremely flat, if feelings of compassion and empathy do not naturally follow through an open, loving heart, there should be an intentional effort to continue to open the heart, to commune with God, and heal the inner child, because we're all God's children. Discover the true bond between our real God parent, as well as healing the parent-child bond, spiritually speaking, will be required to access the higher heart principle and fully embody the attributes of the Christ consciousness. The next stage, progressing beyond the observer point, is feeling encompassed with the universal love of God, which emanates loving, peaceful, and heart-based feelings that are present in the complete state of the compassionate witness. Herein lies perfect peace of God, is what I call it. That's being connected, right? Remembering who you are, remembering your power, remembering that it's the energy of the Creator that loves and is compassionate and empathetic. Practicing with the intent to serve God and open one's higher heart to compassion and empathy through meditation is the process which expands consciousness to levels and accessing the compassionate witness, through the mental continual increase of higher sensory perception or extrasensory perception, depending on your perspective, through acquiring deep sensory feeling abilities, right? And this is another important point. Some of us are already naturally more sensitive. And if you feel that that may be you, right? That when you're around people, you feel how they feel, whether they express it or not. Or when you look at things, you immediately identify as if it was happening to you directly. If you feel like that, say for instance, when you read stories about, child trafficking and ritual satanic sexual abuse, if you not just empathize and it makes you sad, but if you actually feel it as if it's happening to you, you have to be extra careful and extra mindful, right? You're sensitive to this information. You're sensitive to energies, which is a good thing. But it's also painful for a lot of people. Some of it's so painful that they put their head back in the sand. That's not the move. That's not the move. The move is to learn how to shield yourself. True humanity is empathy. God's natural laws returning to planetary architecture of an intelligent design, which is manifested directly through compassion, witness of the source of God. God's source essence is experienced within that true, reverent heart-based feeling of compassion and empathy for all life. This is key to regain our true humanity on this planet, when the majority of people have forgotten their true spiritual identity to the alien mind control programming, aka the demonic programming, aka Satan. The collective pollution of the artificial intelligence mental disease has resulted in psychopathic behavior on the big scale, and in a belief in a system and attitude that is fully disconnected from life, fully anti-life is what's going on here. That is their agenda. When disconnected from life, one is disconnected from the soul and from God's source of light. In order to reconnect with the light, thus have value for human life, to remember that we are all interconnected, one must practice empathy and compassion for yourself and for others. This higher quality is the core essence of every human being's potential in their life expression. Without the experience of deep sensory emotion, a human being becomes disconnected and unable to feel or experience higher consciousness states, which is inherently our connection to God. You understand that, folks? What I wrote there? It's what I explained yesterday when I told the story about being in somebody's house, and my instant reaction was to threaten their loved one, right? With no feeling. This is the state that they want you in. When you can blind police officers with lasers, or you can, as a group, stomp people into the ground, or even worse, when you can harvest fear and sexually abuse children on a massive scale. They have lost their empathy. This is the goal. And so when you see somebody, this is how I can tie it into to answer the question that I was asked. Thank you for your questions, by the way. I hope that continues. When you see someone who is losing their empathy, a loved one, that something that should make them feel doesn't, or that if they do express feeling, it seems artificial, that's because it probably is. You have to embrace them with love, right? This is not enabling, destructive behavior, right? But I'm telling you, these entities and satanic energies cannot survive in the place where true love exists, where true empathy exists, where compassion exists. They can't exist. They will find another place where they can get their fuel, which is fear and anger and trauma. That's what they need. The shield is simple. You have to surround yourself with love. You have to project love. You have to project compassion, even towards these people. Because don't you feel bad to see so much of our youth just completely brainwashed, completely lost, completely under satanic mind control? I keep thinking about the image that was sent right before this podcast started today of a severed pig's head. If you haven't seen it, follow me on Twitter, and it's my most recent post. Very disturbing and very telling about where these people are at, right? In Portland, I lived in Portland 4 years ago before I moved back to the middle of the map here. I won't get more specific than that, but if you follow me on Twitter, you probably can figure out where I live. But let's just say for now, I knew that the tide was changing, and that was going to be ground zero. The entire West Coast, but Portland and Seattle are epicenters of this satanic through the liberal policies, right? They're one and the same at this point. I saw it coming, is my point. These people are in a state right now where they are willing to destroy themselves and their community and hurt people. For what? They don't even understand. I thought this started because of George Floyd, or because of, name it. No, that's not why this started. This has been ongoing. It's just ramping up. Right? This is the agenda. You have to understand that's, and how they sell it to people, how I sold it to people when I was practicing. Say, like, why would you just, not everyone wants to, even not every satanic person necessarily wants to watch the world burn, but they want, because how can they achieve their fame and material success and all the things that people sell their souls for if the world's on fire? So not everyone, even who's conscious of that, wants that, right? I always told people, it's like, and again, this is when I was participating and molding people's minds to think in a sinister, satanic way. We're trying to create, and these people are a long ways from it in a lot of cases because they're soft, but hardened satanic warriors is what they would ideally like to have. And so these people, you see videos of it all over the place, who think they're tough, who think they're cool, who think they're powerful. They're deluded in many cases, but some of them actually are hardened and dangerous and willing to hurt strangers and hurt people. For what? When you just walk up and shoot someone because of the color of their skin, no matter which direction that goes, that is pure evil. When you try to permanently injure or kill someone who is innocent based on what? I've seen it a number of things, because they have a different political opinion or a different race. That is evil. And you see it all over the place. How can they be promoting justice while committing these evil acts on a daily basis? That's the inversion of reality I've been talking about. That's what they're trying to sell these people, and it's working. It's literal 1984 doublethink, double speak. You understand? That is the goal of the satanic web of lies, right? That's what I would teach people, is how you can create such an inverse web, because then in order for someone to process that, then you have their pain body being created, these altars, a source for trauma. Think of it, it's almost like a virtual voodoo doll, right? In higher and lower dimensions right next door to them, right? And if you're sensitive and keen to this, you can tap into it, and then they start to identify with this. They start to identify with the inverse. They start to identify with these false time realities, right? It's a phantom matrix of altered personalities through trauma-based mind control. It's way more sophisticated than people want to admit, a lot of people. It sounds, in a sense, some of it to people sounds like nonsense, but it's not, I promise you. And once you start to see it, it becomes way more apparent. And I know the Q crowd is wise to a lot of this. I have so much respect and admiration for the people's ability to use discernment, right? Use critical thinking. That's the other part of shielding, right? That's what we're talking about here today. So I gave you the meditation practices. I gave you the dangers of crossing the abyss through your own dark night of the soul, and how to shield yourself before you do that, which is something a lot of us at varying levels of intensity are going through right now. Those are my best practices for that. But I also think it's important to understand what to do next. And what to do next comes with critical thinking. That's what I was getting to. Critical thinking. The Q crowd and our abilities to critically think is superior vastly to the majority. Doesn't mean it's perfect. Doesn't mean we always succeed. Doesn't mean we don't get tricked, because we do, myself included, right? If you get tricked, admit it. Don't be so prideful that you can't admit when you're wrong, or you've been led down a rabbit hole that leads to nowhere, that's a distraction, right? Counterproductive pride is not going to help anybody. It has no place here, okay? So if we're wrong, admit it. It's fine. Everyone's wrong. Everyone who's right has been wrong many, 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 many times before that, and we all know this, right? And I hope that makes sense to everybody, right? All those are skills that we have to practice, right? To unlock our latent faculties, our latent abilities as human beings, which are immense and wonderful, right? The ability to sense evil and to sense good and to project those things one way or the other. We're trying to project good here, right? But you see that the occult elite, the satanic elite, have mastered the ability to project fear and anxiety and hate and division. Mastered it. Because they've been doing it for thousands of years. And now they use technology to instantly, to the majority of the population, project their fear, project their anxiety, and project their division across the spectrum of humanity. Shield yourself from it. And I hope that makes sense. That was all listener-based questions here today. And I hope to hear more of it, right? Next time, we're going to talk about how they use sex magic and pornography coupled with drugs to control the majority of the population, right? Other than television and film, through their hypno-programming and the media, I feel like them hijacking our biological imperatives to reproduce, and also our tendency to addict. Those are two very big weapons that they use against us. And that's what we're going to get into next time. That's all I have for you today. I thank you very much for listening. Please give me a like and a subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at TheHanSolo, HANNSOLO, The Han Solo. And I love you all. We're fighting on behalf of God and on behalf of the children, on behalf of our families. It's important to stay strong, right? It's going to get crazier. It's going to get more evil. But we stay vigilant. We stay connected to God. And we have each other's backs through all of this. If someone is struggling and you see them struggling, reach out. Reach out with love. Don't reach out trying to prove a point. If you have a family member that doesn't identify with your beliefs, don't reach out with anger, even though I know it's insanely frustrating. Insanely frustrating sometimes to talk to these people who are under mind control. They have been programmed. You have to understand that. You have to. And so that can be a very frustrating experience to deal with, to try to communicate. And so instead of trying to communicate at first through ideologies or beliefs, reach out to them with love and compassion, because they're victims and they don't even know it a lot of times, right? When you notice the mind control, the mind lock, you have to reach out with love and compassion. And that's what I tried to express here today. I hope that was coherent. I hope that that made sense to everybody. And I hope that that was beneficial, because we all have loved ones who are not yet on the right side of all this. Don't let the frustration of communicating with them cause them to become your enemy if you care about them, right? And anyone that you touch that you see is lost, you should care about like they are your family, because we're all one family, the human race. We're all one consciousness. I'll keep saying it. Okay? So go out and love each other. Shield yourself through meditation and prayer and gratitude and service to others. And we'll win this war. The spiritual war. Thank you very much for listening today. This is Tyler Joseph, and this has been Dark to Light.